You can survive betrayal from a friend. You can even recover from betrayal in business. But when it comes from your own blood, it cuts in a place that never really heals. My name is Ethan Rowland, and for 15 years I helped build my family's vineyard from the ground up. Literally. I kept the lights on, paid the workers, repaired the soil after bad seasons. Meanwhile, my sister Clara was the face of it all. The speeches, the interviews, the smiles for the cameras. And then one morning she fired me. Just like that. No warning, no explanation. Just a cold smile and a stack of papers. But what she didn't know was that while she was busy chasing fame, I was securing something far more powerful. Because in the wine business, the fruit may be fragile, but the land remembers who it belongs to. My name is Ethan Rowland, and for nearly 20 years I was the steady hand behind Rowland Estates, our family's chain of boutique vineyards stretching across Northern California. My younger sister Clara was always the face of it. The charm, the brand, the one smiling for magazine covers with a glass of Pinot in hand. I was the one fixing pumps, managing staff, making sure grapes got harvested before the frost hit. At 45, I didn't need fame. I just wanted the business to run the way our father built it. Slow, honest, profitable. But family businesses have a way of rotting from the inside. Not because of strangers, but because of blood. The day it all happened, the valley smelled like rain and crushed grapes. I was in my office when Clara walked in wearing a navy blazer she'd probably bought just for this moment. Behind her stood 2 board members, both of them her college friends, and the company lawyer. "Ethan," she began softly, almost rehearsed. "The board met this morning. We've decided to move in a new direction." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "A new direction?" She nodded. "We're restructuring. The investors want someone more progressive." "Progressive," I repeated, letting the word roll off my tongue like a bitter sip of wine. "I built the operations that made this company worth investing in." Clara sighed, clasping her hands like she was doing me a favor. "You'll receive a generous severance package, 6 months' pay. HR will walk you through the paperwork." That's when I realized she wasn't just firing me, she was erasing me. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her. At the sister who used to follow me through the vines as kids, chasing butterflies, and said, "Good luck managing the 2024 harvest without me." Her smile flickered for a second, because she knew the irrigation system was overdue for maintenance, and I was the only one who understood the patchwork of sensors and pumps that kept the vineyards alive. I gathered my things, a few ledgers, my father's old corkscrew, a framed photo of our first winery, and walked out. 15 years of work dismissed in 15 minutes. As I stepped into the California sun, I remembered the conversation I'd had with my father 5 years earlier, when the business was booming and everyone thought Clara was the genius behind it. He'd leaned across his porch table, glass of Merlot in hand, and said, "Son, never tie your future to the fruit. The real value's in the soil beneath it." At the time, I didn't fully understand what he meant, but I listened, and I made moves he never knew about. 2 days after being fired, I woke up at my usual time, 5:30 a.m. Habit doesn't care about employment. For nearly 2 decades, my mornings started the same. Coffee, weather report, irrigation schedules, grape yield forecasts. That morning, the only thing waiting for me was silence. I made my coffee anyway and sat on the porch of my farmhouse overlooking the lower vineyard. The fog rolled through the valley like a slow tide, brushing the tops of the vines we'd planted 20 years ago. The same vines that made Rowland Estates famous. Except they didn't belong to Roland Estates. Not anymore. 5 years earlier, when our father's health started to fail, I'd begun reviewing every lease, every parcel of land our vineyards sat on. Back then, 3 of our 4 properties were rented from older families who'd lost interest in farming. The land was cheap, undervalued, but our father was too focused on expansion to think long-term. So I thought for him. While Clara traveled to wine festivals and business conferences, I met with lawyers, bankers, and surveyors. Quietly, patiently. 3 months later, I owned the land under our flagship properties, Oak Hollow, Golden Ridge, and Whisper Valley. I didn't buy them under my own name. I used ER Holdings LLC, a small shell company I'd set up years earlier to manage equipment leases. When the paperwork was done, Roland Estates continued operating as before, leasing the land, unaware that their landlord was me. Even Clara, the new president of the company, signed the rent checks herself. It wasn't deception, not really. It was insurance, the kind you keep for the day your sister forgets who helped build everything she's standing on. That day, after my termination, I drove into town, stopped by the old diner where my father used to take us every Sunday. The owner, Ruth, still recognized me. "Ethan Roland," she said, pouring my coffee. "Haven't seen you since your daddy's memorial. How's Clara?" I smiled thinly. "Running things her way." Ruth shook her head. "Your father used to say, one day you'd be the one keeping this valley honest." Her words lingered with me long after I left. That afternoon, I received a text from Miguel, the head of maintenance at our Oak Hollow vineyard, a man who'd worked under me since his 20s. "Heard what happened. New consultants making changes, replacing suppliers, cutting hours. Feels wrong." I didn't reply. Not yet. 2 days later, my phone rang again. This time it was my father's old business attorney, a man named Harper. "Ethan," he said, "I heard about the board's decision. I'm sorry." I sighed. "Don't be. I've been preparing for this for years." He paused. "You mean the land?" I didn't confirm it, but my silence said enough. "The renewals come up this fall, correct?" he asked. 3 months, I said. "And this time we'll be doing things by the book, at market rates." He let out a low whistle. "That'll triple their operating costs." "I know," I said quietly. "Maybe it's time Clara learns that roots matter more than branding." The following week, I received a message from Clara. She didn't call, of course not. Just a perfectly worded email. "Ethan, we need to discuss the transition of your operational files. The new consultant says several key documents are missing." I typed back a single sentence. "Everything is stored in the shared drive, same place as always." No greeting, no signature, just the truth. A day later, she showed up at my farmhouse unannounced. The same confident walk, same tailored suit. "You're ignoring me," she said. "I'm respecting your decision to remove me from company business." She sat down without being invited. "We can't locate several maintenance schedules, vendor contracts, or lease renewals." I looked her dead in the eye. "The lease renewals are coming up soon. You'll have access to them when it's appropriate." Her expression faltered, just for a second. "What are you implying?" "Nothing," I said. "Just business." That night I stood in my office, staring at the framed map of our vineyard lands. Each parcel marked in red, each one registered under ER Holdings. I thought of my father, his voice calm and steady, Never tie your future to the fruit, son. The real value's in the soil. He was right. And in 3 months, when those leases expired, my sister would finally understand what he meant. But I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I was planning something bigger. A reckoning. Because if Clara thought she could strip me of my life's work and walk away untouched, she was about to learn that roots, like loyalty, run deep. 2 weeks after Clara fired me, I got a certified letter from Roland Estates' legal department. It was polite. Overly polite. A formal request for all documentation related to property operations, vendor contracts, and lease agreements. I smiled. That meant one thing. She'd finally stumbled onto the truth. That the land she'd been building her empire on wasn't hers to give, sell, or control. I forwarded the letter to Harper, my attorney, and within an hour he replied with a single line. All documents have been previously disclosed in the corporate archives. You owe them nothing further. That same day, I started getting calls from the people still working inside the company. Miguel, the maintenance head. Tanya, our vineyard manager in Golden Ridge. Even Aaron, our accountant. The new consultant's gutting everything, Tanya said. They're cutting corners on fertilizer and storage, Miguel warned. Guest ratings are down, Aaron admitted quietly. One by one, they told me the same thing. The business was unraveling. My sister's idea of modernization was cheap labor, cheaper supplies, and expensive PR. By the end of the week, Clara had fired 3 managers and announced a new sustainability initiative, which, from what I could tell, was a branding move to distract investors from declining profits. It was textbook corporate arrogance. And she had no idea that her real problem wasn't inside her marketing department. It was in the dirt beneath her feet. 3 days later, I got a call from my father. "Your sister's in trouble," he said. "I know," I replied. "She's always been in trouble. She's just good at hiding it." "She's called an emergency board meeting," he continued. "Says you've been withholding critical information about company assets." "Nothing's been withheld," I said calmly. "Everything's documented. Has been for 5 years. He sighed. "You should come to the meeting, Ethan." "I'm not on the board anymore." "Still," he said quietly, "this is our family's business. It's time you showed her what that really means." The next morning, I got an email from our insurance provider requesting clarification on recent ownership changes for the Oak Hollow and Golden Ridge properties. Apparently, Clara had tried to update their policies and discovered that the company didn't own the land. She'd been signing rent checks to ER Holdings for years and never once asked who owned it. I stared at the email for a long time before replying. Then I called Harper. "Send them the new lease terms," I said. "Market rate. No exceptions." He paused. "You're sure?" "She wanted control," I said. "Now she can pay for it." That afternoon I drove out to the Oak Hollow property, our biggest vineyard, 800 acres of rolling hills. From the overlook I could see the new banners Clara had hung across the entrance. The future of Roland Estates. Beneath it, workers I didn't recognize were hauling crates of equipment I didn't approve. It looked slick, soulless, like a stranger had moved into my childhood home and painted over the walls. I parked by the service road, rolled down my window, and watched for a while. Then my phone buzzed. It was Aaron again. "You should know," he said carefully. "Your sister's been meeting with investors under her married name, Clara Rowan & Co. She's pitching a new wine label, independent, premium, targeting the same markets as Roland Estates." My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. So she's launching her own brand? Worse, Aaron said. She's using our suppliers, our client list, the same distribution contracts you negotiated. A long silence followed. She's not just replacing you, Ethan, he said quietly. She's trying to replace the entire company. That night, I poured myself a glass of my father's favorite Merlot, the last vintage bottled before he passed, and opened my laptop. In the glow of the screen, I reviewed the lease contracts, property deeds, and renewal notices. Every one of them airtight. Every one of them signed by Clara herself. Then I found something else. A permit application in county records. Filed 2 years ago by Clara Rowan for a new vineyard development less than 20 miles from Golden Ridge. The applicant's company, C. Rowan Vineyards, LLC. Her signature, her address. So that was it. She hadn't fired me because she thought I was incompetent. She fired me because I would have recognized the plan. She wanted to gut Roland Estates from the inside, transfer its value, and launch her own visionary brand. Built on land she thought she owned. Except, she didn't. The next morning I called my father again. She's not just mismanaging the company, I said. She's trying to steal it. He didn't sound surprised. I warned her about pride, he said softly. But she doesn't listen to anyone. She will, I said. Soon. I spent the rest of the day assembling documents, ownership records, lease histories, financial reports. Every thread of paper that proved who really controlled the foundation of Roland Estates. Then I called Harper. Prepare a briefing, I told him. If she wants a board meeting, I'll give her one she won't forget. That evening, as the sun went down over the valley, I stood by the vines that started it all. The air was still, heavy with the scent of ripe fruit. Somewhere beyond those hills, my sister was probably telling investors about her bold new direction. She had no idea that by the time her presentation ended, she'd be standing on land that no longer answered to her name. Because I wasn't out for revenge anymore. This was about principle, about the soil, the sweat, and the truth my father built our family on. And if Clara thought she could bury that truth under money and branding, she was about to find out that the earth always remembers its owner. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at 9. By then, rumors had already begun to spread. Whispers among the staff, a nervous quiet in the hallways of the Roland Estates headquarters. When I walked into the conference room, every head turned. Some faces looked relieved, others uneasy. And at the far end of the table sat Clara, in a crisp white suit, jaw set tight, pretending she wasn't afraid. Our father was there too. Older now, quieter. Watching everything like a man who'd seen too many harvests end the same way. Let's get this over with, Clara began. Her voice carried that same polished confidence she'd used on investors. My brother has been withholding vital information from the company. Property deeds, financial documents. Inerect, I interrupted. Calm, controlled. Everything's been filed properly and signed by you. I have copies here if you'd like to refresh your memory. I slid a folder across the table. The board members leaned forward as she opened it. Inside were copies of the lease agreements. Her signature on every page. Payments from Roland Estates to ER Holdings, LLC. The company she'd approved 5 years ago without asking a single question. Those payments, I said evenly, were rent. For land your company does not own. Land that I do. The silence that followed was suffocating. My father cleared his throat first. Ethan, you purchased the land? 5 years ago, I said. After you told me never to tie my future to the fruit. Clara's voice cracked as she spoke. You can't just hold the company hostage like this. I'm not, I replied. I'm protecting what's ours. Or what used to be ours. I turned to the board. The company has been operating on outdated lease terms. Those terms expire next month. Market rates will apply moving forward. One of the board members, Mr. Gaines, a man who'd been on my father's side for decades, adjusted his glasses. That will cut into operating profit by nearly 40%. Yes, I said, but it will keep things fair, transparent, something this company hasn't been for a while. Clara's cheeks flushed. This is ridiculous. You're just bitter because you lost your job. You're trying to destroy everything we built. Everything we built? I repeated softly. You mean what Dad built? What I kept running, while you were chasing investors and photographers. You didn't build this, Clara. You inherited it. And you've been selling off the family name one press release at a time. The color drained from her face. I could see it then. The realization that she'd underestimated me completely. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out one last document. This, I said, placing it in front of her, is a county development permit filed 2 years ago. Under your married name, Clara Rowan. For a new vineyard less than 20 miles from our own. Using the same suppliers, the same branding language, and the same distribution contacts I personally negotiated. The boardroom erupted. Gasps, whispers. Someone swore under their breath. I let them speak. Then, I said quietly but clearly, my sister wasn't just competing with us. She was using Rowland Estates' resources to build her own private company. A company that would have taken everything we built. Customers, contracts, and reputation. And left this one bankrupt. I turned to my father. I didn't want to expose her like this, but I won't let her destroy what you spent your life building. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, my father looked at Clara, not as a CEO, not even as his daughter, but as a stranger. Is it true? He asked. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And that silence was her answer. 2 hours later, the board voted to remove Clara as president, effective immediately. My father abstained. Too proud. Too broken to take sides. As the meeting ended, Clara brushed past me without a word, eyes burning but empty. I didn't chase her. Some endings don't need closure. 6 months later, Rowland Estates sold its 3 flagship vineyards to Commonwealth Wine Group, one of the largest hospitality conglomerates on the West Coast. I retained ownership of the land, leasing it to Commonwealth at a fair market rate, enough to keep the operations thriving and the workers employed. Miguel still managed maintenance. Tanya still ran Golden Ridge. And the vines? They were greener than ever. Commonwealth asked me to stay on as regional operations consultant. A fancy title that basically meant I was back to doing what I loved. Solving problems. Mentoring staff. Making sure things worked. No politics, No family drama, just honest work. As for Clara, her independent company, C. Rowan Vineyards, folded within a year. Turns out, ambition alone can't keep grapes alive through a dry season. She moved to Napa for a while. I heard she was consulting for a marketing firm. I didn't reach out. But every Christmas, she still sends a card addressed only to E. No apology. Just a small note at the bottom that says, "Dad says hello." And that's enough. Last week, I had dinner with my father. We sat outside on the porch of his small home overlooking what used to be our first vineyard. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky the same deep amber color as the wine we used to bottle together. He raised his glass. "To second chances," he said. I smiled. "To solid ground," I replied. Because that's what it all came down to. Solid ground. You can lose titles, offices, reputations. But if you've built your foundation right, you'll always stand again. Clara forgot that, but I never did. I took one last look at the vineyard, the rows of vines stretching into the distance, glowing under the fading light. And I thought about how roots, once deep enough, always find their way back to the surface.